Hello everyone, my name is Michala Petersen and I'm coming to you from frigid Nebraska. This has been on my heart all day today, so I really wanted to dive in to sugar because, 3 years ago I didn't really know that sugar was something that we should avoid, and I've learned so much, so I want to share a few statistics with you. First of all, by the time an average child in America turns 8 years old, they have consumed more sugar than a human did in their entire lifetime just a century ago. So this is a problem that's not going anywhere. It's on the rise. I think we're getting smarter, but we're going to talk a little bit today about sugar, and specifically sugar in cancer patients. But this is good for just good knowledge for anyone, because I know we all want to prevent disease. 75% of chronic disease is preventable, and we really want our kids and ourselves to be the healthiest that we possibly can be. So I was an avid Pepsi drinker. I'm almost embarrassed to say that, but 3.5 years ago, I drank a Pepsi every single day through every single pregnancy, nursing a baby, whatever. I was addicted to Pepsi. And so there's no judgment here from me. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to a whole food nutritional concentrate a little over 3 years ago that completely changed my cravings. It made the Pepsi and the sugar not taste as good because I really did have a sweet tooth before that. So let's dive in. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about label reading. This is something that I also did. I wasn't taught this in pharmacy school. They don't teach it in medical school. And so we're going to talk about the sugar content on a label. So if you have any substance that has a nutrition facts label, you can turn to the back and it'll say how many grams of sugar is in a particular substance. And if you divide the grams by 4, then you will be able to see how many teaspoons of sugar is in that particular substance. So right here today, I have a few common things that people drink on a regular basis, and then we're going to get into why we care about the sugar content. So here is a raspberry pure leaf iced tea, and you would think it's kind of benign, right? It doesn't have a ton of caffeine in it, but it actually has 46 grams of sugar. So for this bottle here, and you have to be very careful because some of them, like Mountain Dew, if you get a big bottle, it's like 2 servings per one bottle. So then you have to multiply it by 2. So the raspberry iced tea has 11.5 teaspoons of sugar in this drink right here. I have a Red Bull that's popular among our youth especially, and Red Bull has 9.75 teaspoons of sugar. Now you'd never go to your sugar bowl and eat 9.75 teaspoons of sugar, but we don't think twice about putting this into our body. So this is a juice, and I know my kids used to always be like, "Mom, can we have juice?" This little guy right here has 12 teaspoons of sugar for this bottle. A Gatorade has, let's see, how many grams does this have? 34 grams of teaspoons, or 34 grams of sugar. So this is just about 9 teaspoons of sugar. Plus this has red dye and all sorts of things in it that we don't want to put into our body. And finally, the Pepsi that I was addicted to has 41 grams of sugar. I know. Anyway, and I measured this out here. This is kind of sad that I don't even have any processed sugar in the house, but this is sugar in the raw organic sugar, and so that's 10.25 teaspoons of sugar that I wasn't thinking twice about putting into my body. So why do we care about the sugar content? Number one, even just a few teaspoons of sugar can deplete the immune system by 50% for up to 4 to 6 hours. I did not know that, and that's incredible, but if you think about it, common sense wins. And when do our kids get sick? When do we get the random acts of barfness, like I call it at our house, right? We get sick after Halloween and Christmas and Easter and the holidays where we're sugared up, we're tired, where our energy is depleted. And if you're like me, you want your kids to behave perfectly, so we're putting added stress on our kids during the holiday season as well. And so that's one of the main reasons is sugar. So you also think about this time of year, and in Nebraska it's really cold, so we aren't airing out the house, we aren't able to get outside and exercise like we normally do. At least where I live, we don't have access to the vine-ripened fresh produce that we do usually, in the summertime. We aren't gardening typically in the wintertime, and so we don't have access to those, ready to go phytochemicals that really help us prevent disease. And then if you have cancer and you're receiving any immunosuppressive therapy, your immune system is already depleted, so adding insult to injury is not what we want to do. And so that's the second thing we're going to go into right now. What if you do have cancer, or you know of somebody with cancer, and we know the statistics, and we know that that's probably all of us, right? So cancer cells love sugar. And the reason is cancer uses fermentation to produce energy. And so fermentation doesn't require oxygen, but it does require glucose. And so that's why a lot of cancer patients crave carbohydrates, those simple carbohydrates that can be converted really easily to energy for those cells. And so this concept that sugar feeds cancer actually isn't new. It was proven by German Otto Warburg in 1924, and he actually won a Nobel Prize for it in 1931. And so cancer cells uptake 10 to 12 times more sugar than healthy cells. So it kind of makes sense, right? If you think about it, common sense, I always say common sense wins out. So if a cancer cell did not feed on glucose, because I know you can look on the internet and see all sorts of controversial stuff, but think about this. If a cancer cell did not feed on glucose, then why before a PET scan, which is the most reliable test as far as diagnosing cancer, would carbohydrates be restricted for 24 hours? And then we're injected with a radioactive glucose that then the cancer cells gobble up because they're starving, right? Because they haven't had, your body still makes glucose, but it hasn't had any outside sources of simple carbohydrates over the last 24 hours. And so then the cancer cell, or the rapidly growing cells, glow on a PET scan. And so that's just kind of an interesting fact that really, to me, says that, cancer does suck up that glucose and does feed on sugar. So if we can eliminate the processed sugar that we're eating, we're always going to be better off. Okay, so the third thing that I want to talk about is that cancer thrives in an acidic environment. And we're going to talk about that in a later video of how to make your body more alkaline and how to get that environment better so cancer can't thrive as much. But sugar is acidic. And sugar has a pH of about 6.4, and so that's 10 times more acidic than your blood. So we'll talk more about that in a later video. But I don't want you to get the wrong impression here that if I have cancer, if I'm trying to prevent cancer, then I need to go sugar-free. Those are actually worse, and we'll talk about those also at a later date. There's all sorts of studies out there that show that aspartame or any other synthetic sugar substance or artificial sugar degrades to formaldehyde in your body, and that causes all sorts of havoc in the immune system. And our immune system is what really can help us fight cancer. And we have little natural killer cells that are like Pac-Man that roam around the system and eat cancer irregularly growing cells. And so if we deplete those with sugar or putting other things into our body that doesn't serve us well, then we're not helping ourselves to the best of our ability. So the bottom line here is that whole food is always best. If you reach out to me, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have a sweet tooth, there's no way that I could ever cut out sugar, because it's really a lot easier than you think. And there are natural sugars that do serve our body well, that are delicious. Fruits are a good source of that. And you may think, well, fruit has sugar, but it's not that, it's not the sugar that is readily taken up by the cancer cells and converted, those simple sugars. So, and there are lots of phytochemicals in fruit that really do help prevent cancer. So, calories are not calories. A lot of times we hear that when my grandma was going through her cancer treatment, we actually had a dietitian say, what you're doing isn't caloric enough. You need to add juice to the shake that she was drinking. And that's not true. We know how much sugar is in one of these little supposedly 100% concentrated juice. So sugar substitutes, stevia is a naturally occurring sweetener. It's a plant. Palm sugar is decent too. And honey is a naturally, is a natural sugar as well. And it would be superior to high fructose corn syrup or, any of those man-made sugars, but it still is probably not the best. So the bottom line here is our immune system does have natural defenses to help us, gain control of the situation or prevent cancer. And so anyone is better off to reduce the amount of processed sugars that you consume on a daily basis. I know pretty much our family for the last 3 years, I mean, it's kind of terrible that I don't even have any processed sugar in the house. I've completely changed the way I bake, and we are healthier because of it. We've only had one sick visit in the last 3 years to the doctor. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Give me some thumbs up or hearts if you thought it was helpful for you. And I'll be back next week with a video on alkalinity and making your body more alkaline. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thanks so much.